Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 7th, 2020. Rondo Deportes. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, thank God it's Friday because it's freezing down here, and hopefully it will warm up for the weekend with the kickoff of this new spring football league, and it's winter time.
It's winter time. I guess everybody's even Mother Nature is confused about what time of the season or year it is. Big C, it's all fair in love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports Podcast on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have the app. And I also really want to make sure on this beautiful Friday that we pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline for military veterans, people going through some type of issues. You can get help. Just call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. For you good old boys online, just go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we're dealing with this cold blast of winter that's going through, many of our veterans have found themselves being homeless, Charlton, in America, and they don't have a future that they can understand.
Yeah.
And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there hopefully to stem the horrific tide of suicide that we have in this country. We lose some 19 veterans to that a day. But not only that, Charlton, we have veterans that are freezing on the streets at night in America right now.
Yep.
And so if we can get people to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number to hopefully have someone there to talk to and understand their plight and give them sense of direction and belonging, Charlton, that's what so many people need. So we lose veterans and we lose everyday citizens to suicide, which is an horrific disease that people think of as an embarrassment, but suicide doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, I
know.
So
any way that you can help out someone, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, whether it's a normal citizen or a veteran. You should never hesitate.
And that's very well said, Big C. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. For you guys online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can also get some help. Really appreciate giving out that PSA. Also want to make sure that people understand launching a real estate TV channel in the spring of 2020. The goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, and we'll be bringing that to you also as part of what Big C is doing with real estate as well as sports. You know, back in the day, I remember growing up, Big C, I was always paying attention to the football season, and it's always, usually, my time clock knows that right around the, I guess you could say the month of August, that's when a lot of the teams would start doing the double days for high school, also colleges and NFL. So my body clock was always getting ready for football. But now that football's over, my body clock just feels like it's confused like the weather. We have football on Saturday, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, football on Saturday, the new version of the XFL is going to kick off once again. And I think that this time, Charlton, it has a better chance of making it because gambling nationwide is involved. And Americans want something that they can bet on. And now that you can bet legally in all 50 states, I think that's going to be a huge boost for this new league and the fickle fans out there who are just dying for something to bet on.
You know what's funny? I was telling you how my body clock is used to football right around August, maybe even late part of July. And then we get used to basketball right around October. And then in baseball, we get used to baseball right around March. And then, of course, April when the season starts. But you just said something that's so poignant as to why we have football. And sometimes I hear good old boys saying, if we have too much sports, then people aren't going to be interested in going to the game. They got to understand what you just said. It's the gaming business that pours a lot of money into the pockets of the people who are in that industry. We have fantasy football. You can bet on almost anything. You can even see stadiums that are 50% full. We've already seen that in some sports teams, especially college games. It doesn't stop the games from happening. So you're saying that people are going to bet on XFL too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's going to be one of the mainstays of that league support, Charlton. If you think about the NFL last year and partnering up with Caesars, gaming corporation, and the NFL saw how important it was to have gaming backing in the league because so much money is bet on the league. And now with the Raiders moving to Las Vegas, the door has been wide open with the NFL for betting. There was $9 million bet on the Super Bowl legally here in America and around the world, Charlton. So gaming is something that people look at as far as earning a living. Many people do it professionally. And now with the XFL doing that extended football season for everybody, now that college is over and the NFL is over, you don't have to go into the doldrums for the next 5 months waiting on football to kick off because it's going to kick off on Saturday, and the sports books have the teams up on the board with the normal bets, spread, over and under, and the prop bets, Charlton.
Yeah, isn't that something? I think one of the smartest guys in the universe has to be Mark Davis. And maybe John Gruden. People said, how could you give a coach $100 million to coach a losing NFL franchise in the now Las Vegas Raiders? But Mark knew they were going to Las Vegas, Big C. And I know you know what I'm going to say is true. The same reason people go to Kansas. Not all bets are done above board. Sometimes people slip you a paper bag, and it makes you move your franchise because there's sometimes you don't get taxed on paperback money. I'm not saying that's the case with the Raiders. But in the last couple of years, with all the talk about who's going to go where and will they allow, gambling to coexist with professional sports in Las Vegas. Well, they have it in New Jersey, Big C, Atlantic City, New Jersey. They have that's where the Jets and the Giants play. They play in New Jersey. They don't play in New York. Amazing they got a new stadium a couple of years ago also. So when you said that, do you think it's going to be a problem with taking multimillionaire athletes, and not that they don't exist anyway, and giving them a home in Las Vegas where sometimes the shenanigan might happen more often, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, ironically, Charlton, there's more sports money bet in Philadelphia in 2019 than there were in Las Vegas because of the tri-state area. And you think about the teams that's around that area, Charlton. You have the Washington Redskins within reach. You have the Philadelphia Eagles. You have the New York Giants, New York Jets. So you have a multitude of teams that are in reach in the Philadelphia market, Charlton, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and hockey. And there's more sports betting done in Philadelphia than there is in Las Vegas because just of the population within itself, Charlton. All of the bets are in Vegas. They make their money off the gaming, not the casino sports book. But in Philadelphia, it's 4-1, the amount of money that's wagered on sports betting versus Las Vegas. So I don't think that the NFL will be affected. You think about the NHL. It went into Vegas 2 years ago with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Had a very successful run in their inaugural season, Charlton, making it all the way to the Stanley Cup. The first expansion franchise to ever do that. And I don't think betting interfered with that in any kind of way, nor will it interfere with the Raiders going to Vegas because of what has been in existence in Philadelphia forever.
I think it's something else because when we talk about betting, I think you said about $9 billion bet on the Super Bowl, but that's legal money. We don't know, but the underground money has its own way of surviving also. So when you talk about the XFL rules, and I do too, I believe this league will make it because they have more stable sponsors now. They're not just going out there getting people who are, asking for crowdfunding to pay for their sports franchise. So think about some of the rules that are going to come up, and maybe the NFL could adopt it. They're going to replace the coin toss to determine the possession of the first rendition of the XFL back in 2001. A player from each team lined up on the 35-yard line and then raced and dove toward the ball. I thought that was crazy. It was placed at the 50-yard line. That's how you get players hurt. They have a few changes that are coming that I think is going to be really helpful for this league. There's no extra point kicks, so you don't need kickers for this. What they're going to do instead, Big C, is give you a chance. You can go for 1 point from the 2-yard line, 2 points from the 5-yard line, or 3 points from the 10-yard line. If you're a kicker, you probably hate that, but I think it's going to be more exciting for people who bet. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what they're doing, Charlton, is opening up options and opportunity. When you think about all the leagues that have sprung up over the decades, they've all been feeders to the NFL as far as ideas. The NFL has constantly adopted brands from the other leagues and adopted them and called them as their own. You think about a lot of the interventions in the NFL of today, they've taken it from the Canadian Football League over the years, but people think that it's NFL inventions when you think about the spread offenses. The West Coast offense was never the West Coast offense. They could have called it the Canadian offense because Bill Walsh stole bits and pieces from that, and Marv Levy had brought it down to the NFL also, Charlton, along with Bud Grant.
Yeah.
So what they were doing in Canada, they brought it down here to America, but, they wanted to name it after someone here instead of saying it was Canadian football that was being played here in the U.S.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to learn and steal from somebody else. And when you find something that's successful and you can speed up the game, make the game more exciting, allow more points to be scored because that's the reason that fans show up. They want to see the points scored.
Yeah.
You'll always take those and make them interventions in your league.
Yeah, I think everybody steals a little bit. They say if you're not cheating, you're not trying, Big C. So I like the idea that if you want to go and score, and of course you get the touchdown and then you get the point after a touchdown, you can go for 2 points or you can go for, it's just a matter of how they decide to do it. I think a lot of teams will like that 2-yard line, 5-yard line, or 10-yard line. Also for the XFL, I think it has safer kickoff and punts. You have 2 other play innovations involved in the kicking game. So kickoffs have been offered to make them a little bit safer so players are not hitting each other as much as full speed. The kicker will kick off from the 30-yard line as opposed to 5 yards further back than the NFL. And it's a way to limit the touchbacks too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, like I said, you're trying to create more opportunities and thinking that you will expose more opportunities for points. And that's what the league is looking at, big play opportunity. Football had become such a doldrum years ago, a couple of decades ago, when it was all about defense and you had all these low-scoring games, 7-3, 9-6, 14-7, 14-10. Fans were no longer intrigued by that, nor could the sports book make money on it. It's hard to lay money lines.
Yeah.
But now as you see that the game is wide open and they put skirts on a lot of the offensive players where you can't touch them because they don't want you to be called for abuse.
Yeah.
And so the game has become more wide open because you can't touch people anymore.
Yeah, you can't touch them. Also, the XFL, they've made some changes to disincentivize punting in hopes of encouraging more teams to go for it on 4th down. Balls that are punted in or out of the end zone will be marked at the 35-yard line as opposed to the 20-yard line, which is what the NFL does. And the XFL is calling that a major touchback. If a team does punt, it will be more difficult to cover. No player on the punt team can run downfield until the ball is actually kicked, Big C. So that extra second or two, they can't run downfield until that happens, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's sort of a rule that they took from the Canadian Football League. If you look at the Canadian Football League, they have a 5-yard halo where you can't be within that area until the punt returner touches the ball. And this is a similar type act that the XFL is putting in, part of those nuances, Charlton, because with the way the kickers can kick the ball now and you can get hang time, kickers can hang the ball in anywhere between 4.5 and 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you just want to kick the ball 30 yards down the field, 35, it's going to give your cover team adequate time to get down and cover the kick.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, this is something that I think back to the play when Cal played Stanford back in, I believe, 1981 or 82. It was at the Coliseum over in Berkeley. And, I mean, we all know the band is out on the field, the great Joe Starkey at Stanford and Cal. You have 2 forward passes that are legal. When you think about this, the XFL rule book, it has the double forward pass. It will be allowed as long as the first pass is completed behind the line of scrimmage. Once the ball is past the line of scrimmage, there's no forward passes are allowed. Do you like that? It's almost like option, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, it's intriguing on how that's going to play out and how well players can adapt to that. I mean, and like I said, this is something that's different. This is a rule that the NFL will never adapt because it's set in its profile already of what it's going to allow, and it's not going to go to that extreme to change what's been done for decades. This XFL rule is there trying to create more excitement and more points.
Yeah, I think something that you like, you always talk about this replay. You know, why does it take 5 minutes on an instant replay when they go under the booth? Or they call that guy in New York, whatever you're doing in New York. You can't call the guy in the stadium. You got to call New York instead. Well, the XFL, they're aiming to play each game in under 3 hours. I think the Super Bowl was about 4 hours. Of course, you have more halftime shows and longer commercials. But most games go about 3.5 hours, it seems. That's just what it seems to me. They're trying to get every game under 3 hours, but the same amount of total plays. And in order to do that, Big C, the XFL, they're going to focus on reducing the time between plays. And I think you'll like that because they've added an 8th official on the field, and that official's only job is to spot the ball. Once the official spots the ball, a 25-second play clock will begin. I don't know if that helps when you have guys that are getting to be 350 pounds, and we saw what happened with Chip Kelly when he took that plan from Oregon and took it to the Philadelphia Eagles. They were not as successful. You got linemen weighing 350 pounds, or maybe say 330, okay? They can't be rushing up and down the field. That may not be a healthy thing for them, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's why you're going to have a leaner, faster offensive line in the XFL.
Yeah.
And like I said, they've taken a lot of the nuances from the Canadian Football League. They have a 20-second play clock that they've operated with. And you know, in watching that Grey Cup last year, you saw how quick that the plays were had.
Yeah.
And those linemen up there seem to be just as big as the linemen in the NFL. So this is something that you've trained for in the training camps that they've had, the 25-second play clock. So the players are ready for it.
Yeah, and another thing that we saw in the Super Bowl, I saw it at least one time, they have another effort to speed up the game. They rewrote the illegal man downfield, penalty to help eliminate one of the most common penalties, especially when you have a running back, not necessarily running back, but quarterbacks that are very mobile. And oftentimes those offensive linemen, they don't know when to run downfield and block or to stay in the pocket and block, because you have quarterbacks that are so mobile. When they get outside of that pocket, as an offensive lineman, you don't want to see your quarterback get hit. So maybe you'll release downfield. So they're doing a job with the XFL to not have that as a penalty. I would love to see the NFL do that. If you're going to lean toward the mobile quarterback, let's eliminate illegal blocker downfield, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the problem with that, Charlton, is that if you get linemen releasing all the time, now you're going to get quarterbacks hit.
Yeah.
And so it's about maintaining your block, because you don't know if that quarterback is going to come back against the grain once he's gone in one direction, if the flow closes against him. So I think that's just part of the rules that the NFL is not willing to change, because mobility of the quarterback, that quarterback as well as those linemen have to adapt to what's going on in the league.
Yeah, well, I think another rule that you might like, and I think a lot of people will, I know you talk about how it takes 5 minutes to determine if a player actually made a catch or was he inbounds or out of bounds, when we could normally see it with our own eyes within about 10 or 15 seconds. It's called a clear definition of a catch. And for example, what is a catch? Sometimes it's not clear in the NFL. We can see guys with our own 2 eyes make a catch, have the ball in the hand, in possession, get 2 feet in bounds, and then that good old boy says, well, the ball was being bobbled. Okay? So we don't need some guy from New York telling us that. But they're going to clear that up, Big C. They're hoping to eliminate the uncertainty surrounding catches by only requiring that a player touch the ground inbounds with any part of the body and then maintain control to make the act more common. I think they're doing that in the NFL, but it's always in the eye of the beholder. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in the NFL, it's about control after even being out of bounds. So
Yeah.
you just can't fall out of bounds and the ball comes out. You got to maintain control of the football, and that's been one of the things in the NFL. It takes too long in the NFL to decide what is an actual play or not a play, Charlton. And so that's something that hopefully they'll clean up soon.
Yeah, I hope they will. But it's always something to, the prop bet comes in. How many catches, how many yards, did he bobble, did he catch the ball, etc. Yards after the catch also. The XFL also did not make an effort to go after big name, NFL rejects like Johnny Manziel out of Texas A&M. We know some issues that he had when he got the chance to play in the professional league. But college stars that are not eligible yet for the NFL, like Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, they're not making an effort to push for guys at that level. And I think they're respecting the NFL in that because, if you challenge them, the NFL has enough money to shut people down. So I like the fact that they're not trying to sneak back door and get players that the NFL is looking at. Or do you like that or not, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think those players are interested in the XFL, Charlton. Your ultimate goal is to get to the NFL. And if that opportunity and window exists, the XFL doesn't have the money to compete with the NFL.
Yeah.
So, why, as an undrafted free agent, you make it in the NFL, you're going to make $750,000
Yep.
if you're on the active roster.
Yeah.
So why would you go to a lesser league and only play for maybe 10% of that?
Yeah, that's very true. And then speaking of playing for about 10% of that, they are, think about this, I think they can adapt some of this with the league. The league chose to stick with players that they can rely on, like you mentioned, and not trying to go after players who are going to jump ship. But they're committed to a full 10-week season. And I think, my goodness, what's the NFL going to go to 17? Right now we're at 16. Came to 16 from 14. So the NFL is going to 17. XFL is only going to do 10 weeks. So you're not going to have as many players being banged up. That means when their season's over, they will get a chance to at least try out for NFL teams. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, all the leagues have always offered that opportunity, and when the USFL used to be around, Charlton, there were players that left the USFL and came and played a full NFL season, which, really put a lot of stress on the body. The NFL, if it does go to a 17-game season, I know there's nothing that came out of collective bargaining agreement, but, money's going to have to be sacrificed one way or the other, either by the owners or by the players, for that to extend. I mean, this league has grown every time you turn around. It used to be a 12-game league. Now there was 14. Now it's 16.
Yeah.
I don't know what good a 17-game schedule is going to be, Charlton, other than for the sports betting.
TV
but
betting.
It's not going to be beneficial for the players.
Yeah, it never really has been about the players. It's always been about how much money can you put in my wallet. I think the great Sam Jackson said, "What's in your wallet?" And that's when the NFL billionaire said, "We need more money in our wallet," and that's why it's happening, Big C. So when you think about some of the players, household names, not as much as we find in the NFL. Kenny Robinson, he's a safety for St. Louis. He's the only XFL player who entered the league with college eligibility remaining. A 21-year-old. He was dismissed from West Virginia last June because of some academic issues. Also a name that may spark some good memories, especially in the Buckeye State. Cardell Jones, quarterback, came out of Ohio State, I believe, and now he's with the DC Defenders. He's a permanent part of the Buckeye lore after leading Ohio State to a national championship. But as a freshman, Big C, his NFL career was a little bit short, but he's a player that can go back and get his recognition back, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you have to seize whatever opportunity you can. A lot of times guys come out of college and they're not prepared, and they take it for granted that, they're going to be there forever, but the next young gun is already up.
Yeah, you think about how it creates opportunities. And I remember another player by the name of Marquette King, who's a punter, will be with the St. Louis Battlehawks. They might just win the championship because Missouri's been rolling lately with the St. Louis Blues and then the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, keep an eye on the St. Louis Battlehawks. Marquette King, he's a punter, and I remember him playing for the Raiders, but he probably won't get a lot of opportunity because they're trying to de-incentivize punting, but he's still a big name that could help people, maybe put butts in the seats. Also, there's a guy named by Kenyon Ely, defensive end, by the Houston Roughnecks, Big C. He was a second-round pick in the 2014 draft. He did start 15 games for the Carolina Panthers over 3 seasons, but he was traded to New England, and also here's another chance for him to redeem his career, Big C, you're thinking.
Well, Charlton, this is what the XFL is all about. Guys getting them off the couch, getting them back on the field, see if they have anything left in the tank.
They got to have something in the tank. Antonio Callaway, wide receiver, Tampa Bay Vipers. Wouldn't it be amazing if they have fewer interceptions thrown than Jameis Winston through 10 games? One of the most intriguing XFL names. It won't be playing this season. The ex-Browns receiver, he was injured in practice with the Vipers and is now on injured reserve. Guys are getting injured in injured reserve right now before the league even starts. That's not a good thing. They really need the passing game to work. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, football is football. You're always going to have injuries, and you never know what type of injury is going to spring up, especially as far as the lower extremities goes, Charlton. It's a common thing in all forms of football from Pop Warner on up.
Yeah, it's you can always get hurt in practice, and of course you can get hurt in a game. I want to make sure that players are healthy. It's all part of fun. Should be a great start to football for the XFL. We have our first games Saturday, February the 8th. The Seattle Dragons versus the DC Defenders is at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC Sports. And also the Los Angeles Wildcats versus the Houston Roughnecks. That's a 5 p.m. start East Coast time on Fox. Now, I want to get your thoughts on why. I don't know what stadiums are going to show yet. I haven't really seen that. I'm sure they're going to play in some NFL stadiums. I would love to see if that makes sense, because you don't want to see stadiums that hold 65,000, 70,000 with about 35,000 people in the seats, maybe 40,000. Give me your feeling on if they get that type of environment, Big C. You know they black out NFL games. Would that be a good or bad look for this new league? I'd rather see them play in smaller venues. Your thoughts?
I don't think that they're going to be participating in NFL stadiums, Charlton. There's a lot of smaller college stadiums around that would be more fitting for this type of football that they could play in. A lot of stadiums that you're going to find in the 30 to 50,000 seat capacity, Charlton, I think would be fine for this league. As far as its inaugural season, you don't want to go overboard and having these cavernous facilities and no one in them.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I know they knew that the Oakland Raiders were leaving Oakland and going to Las Vegas for the last couple of years. And I remember the Oakland had I believe they were called the Oakland Invaders, part of the USFL back in the day. And it would have been nice to have a team show up in Oakland. But on Sunday, February 9th, we have the Tampa Bay Vipers. They're playing the New York Guardians at the 2 o'clock p.m. kickoff East Coast time on Fox Sports. And then the St. Louis Battlehawks will play the Dallas Renegades at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. So I'm looking forward to the XFL. I hope that the league can make it. I think it's just a matter of time before you give people opportunity. We're all about finding a growing economy, and I just hope it lasts longer than the last league that lasted about, a cup of coffee, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it wasn't around long. The half was only, I think, 8 games before they disbanded the league, Charlton. And that went away with a puff.
Yeah, a puff of smoke and it was gone. So we listen nothing but the best. When you have money, you can make things happen. And I really hope that we have a lot of success with the XFL. It gives some coaches some training ground. I think it also gives some broadcasters training grounds. But I'm also sure the broadcasters, they'll be recycled into the XFL, as well as a lot of coaches will also get recycled into the XFL. We're going to take what's called the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about some things happening in the world of college football. And also, that small man lineup for the Houston Rockets has been working, but I don't know if it has a long life, Big C. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. And the app that I really love is by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors, You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You can also look for the launching of 2020 in the springtime. Big C Sports. Also with real estate, we'll do a TV channel for real estate listings in 2024, the spring coming up. So some of the top real estate brokers, you want to get your property sold, put them on TV. That way more people can find you. We want to be bringing that to you in the spring of 2020. I want to bring to your attention, we were just talking about XFL football. We just came off this thing where I think only one African American got a job in the NFL, and that was in a managerial position, and that was in Cleveland. But when we look at the XFL, and people say, well, where are you going to get your coaches from? We know it's going to be a lot of recycling. But at the college level, you think about Clemson University down in the South, and you always talk about, Big C, why do so many of the top athletes want to go down south and play down? Well, maybe some African-American coaches can also follow that yellow brick road. Tony Elliott, he became the highest paid African-American coach in college football. And you would have thought that it would have happened a long time ago, but it's not surprising that it's at a Southern school. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it did happen a long time ago. Kevin Sumlin was the highest paid African-American head coach in college football out of the University of Arizona, making $5 million a year. But Tony Elliott is an assistant coach.
Yeah.
And as an assistant coach, he became the highest paid assistant in all of college football, passing Steve Sarkisian at Alabama. Clemson rewarded him earlier this week with a $5.1 million annual salary as the offensive coordinator of the Clemson Tigers. And if you look at what they've done under Tony Elliott since he's been the offensive coordinator, Charlton, they've been in the college football playoffs every year.
Yeah.
And so this is a guy that you don't want to lose if you're an organization, and that's what Dabo Swinney has done. He is guaranteed and solidified that his offense will be solid for the next several years by retaining Tony Elliott. And you got to look at it from Tony's perspective also.
Yeah.
If he was to go out and get a head coaching job, Charlton, he wouldn't go out and get a head coaching job in a top 25 school. He would end up probably at a school that had a struggling resume, and all of his talents would not be seen and showcased like they've been at Clemson. So this is that double-edged sword. When you ask why aren't there more African-American head coaches, nobody was going to pay Tony Elliott $5.1 million, and that's why Clemson gave it to him to come and be their head coach.
So you're saying Clemson's smart. Now, it is a Southern program. I know because I'm a West Coast guy, and with some major media markets on the West Coast, of course, in California with Los Angeles and then San Francisco Bay Area. Even if you go up north to the Seattle, Washington area, that's a large metropolitan market. Even San Diego, part of the Mountain West with San Diego State, another large metropolitan market. I would say even Phoenix, Phoenix, Arizona, but Phoenix and Tempe, Arizona, large metropolitan areas. But the fact that you still go south and there's a smaller media markets, but a smaller media market is paying an assistant coach more money than some of the head coaches out here, even on the West Coast. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you lose traction in college football when you talk about media markets. Media markets have never really meant anything in college football over the last 30 years. When you look at the landscape of who's been winning and staying on the top of the college football world, Charlton, it's been the smaller cities with the large schools because of the environment that kids are looking for when they leave home, and they want to go to an environment that they can grow and be embellished in. And that's what you get when you look at these college towns that have the stadium right on campus versus, as you talk about out there on the West Coast, I mean, kids got their television on their phone. Social media is on their phone. It's not about, they don't have Nielsen boxes. And so that's not what's attractive to them. When they can look on campus and see that stadium that seats 100,000 people being full versus that off-campus stadium being half full, which one would you want to go to as a student athlete?
Yeah, and that's something that I think about when you're a young player and you want to go to an environment. There was a movie called Cheers back in the day out of Boston, and you want to go where everybody knows your name. And when you have, even if they don't know your name, when you see people who look like you, I think oftentimes that can help you feel a little bit more comfortable. So I really appreciate what Dabney Sweeney has been able to do. Do you think it opens up more roads? Because the one thing that just happened, Big C, everyone talks about making more money. Like Sam Jackson says, what's in your wallet? Is that a precedent for more top college programs to give some athletic assistant, offensive coordinator, like an Eric Bieniemy going from Colorado and now he's with Andy Reid with the Kansas City Chiefs? Are we going to see more universities opening up the checkbook for African-American offensive coordinators? It just happened to come off the heels of Eric Bieniemy helping the Kansas City Chiefs win a Super Bowl. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it's about African-American offensive coordinators, Charlton. It's about success. It's about who can do the best job. I mean, that's what it's come down to. Opportunity is always key when you're getting a coaching position, but African-Americans are not big on getting coaching positions in college football. There are only 16 African-American coordinators in all of college football. When you think about that, of the power conferences, Charlton, and I think it's 123 major universities that play college football on the power division.
Power 5, yeah.
There's 16 African-American coordinators. That's offense and defense combined. Although that's, it's in line with what the NFL has when you think about the NFL. So as you think about that, where's the opportunity? You're not going to get these big contracts. And you think about Tony Elliott, like I said, he's been in the college football playoffs every year. That has some value, and that's what Clemson sees, that it has value, because you got to look at the return of the money that comes to the university.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about what the SEC got at the end of this last football season, Charlton, all of the teams in the conference, and there are 16 teams in the conference after the bowl season and everything was done. All the SEC teams split equally. $44 million came from football to the athletic programs. $44 million. So that's how you're able to afford your coaches, because that's just from football revenue, television revenue, not the other revenue that the universities are making. But they all received a $44 million cash boost into all their athletic programs just off of football alone in the SEC, and that's 16 teams.
I want to get your thoughts on something, too, because we think about football being a very diverse, one of the most diverse sports in the universe when you think about college football. If you're, and again, I don't know if this is true, but I think in my gut it feels true. I hear so many young players, they want to go where people look like them. I think Clemson, it can potentially open a door for more of this to happen, because as these universities are dominated by African Americans, I would just say this too. If you take away the top African American players on these teams like Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Florida, LSU, take away the top black players, and you don't have those teams winning even 500. They'd probably be under 500 in their win-loss record, Big C. But if you are one of those young African-American boys, young men, and you say, where do I go once my playing days are over? Do I have an opportunity to get on as a staff? Do you see that being a trend, or is it just like a speed bump, Big C? Your thoughts?
There's not many kids, Charlton, who think about coaching. That's not what they look at as far as their future. They want to get out and play. They're not thinking about coaching. And it's not many African Americans who want to go that route, Charlton. They're thinking about playing. The guys who are talking about coaching are a lot of the backups, and they're normally the white players, and they say, hey, I want to become a grad assistant. That's something that African Americans really don't look at. If their playing days are over, they're looking to go out and make money, not be a grad assistant and donate more time. So that's one of the reasons why you don't have a lot of African American coaches, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because they're unwilling to become grad assistants.
Well, I think sometimes the opportunity makes you willing. If you don't see it, then maybe you think it doesn't exist. And sometimes we know there's been an invisible glass ceiling, if that makes any sense.
Every football, basketball, baseball, track and field, swimming team, they all have grad assistants while you are a player.
Yeah.
You see the guys that are out there doing the grad assistant. They're doing all the grunge work. They're picking up the balls. They're passing the plays out. They're holding up the sheet in the huddle so you can recognize what to run offensively and defensively.
Yeah.
Those are the grad assistants. And a lot of these guys who have been star athletes, that's not what they're looking to do. They're thinking that's demeaning work. They're not understanding that they got to put in 5 years as a grad assistant to get on the staff someplace, Charlton, or even do film breakdown and all those things. I had a friend of mine that years ago, he did grad assistant work at the University of Miami just to get on the staff. But he was a grad assistant 3 years, and this was after he had graduated. He had been a high school football coach, but he wanted to get back into college coaching. So he had to do a grad assistant again at another major university just to be able to get on staff for 3 years.
That's interesting. I would love if we maybe look at it later in the year, the HBCs, because Eddie Robinson, the winningest coach in the history of college football, over 400 wins down at Grambling State. I'm sure they had a lot of grad assistants. We just don't know about them because maybe they don't get the media publicity. But I know a lot of those coaching programs are loaded with African-American men that would love to go on to that next level. I want to get your thoughts on something, Big C, as we're talking about, and again, congratulations to Clemson opening up doors for diversity. At the college football's top level, there are 13 African-American head coaches at the FBS schools. That's actually down from 15 2 years ago, and roughly in line with the NFL's puny numbers of 3 out of 32. So just as I was asking, will this open up the doors? It's actually declined a little bit, but the money's gotten higher. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's declined, Charlton, but, it's tougher on African-American coaches. If you don't win, you normally don't get that second chance to get a head coaching job. White coaches recycle, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's NFL, college football, high school football, Charlton. They recycle because when you look at college football, when you're looking at boosters and donors, Charlton, they want someone generally who looks like them when they're sitting there shooting the bull, as they would say, and telling jokes and having fun and donating money. They want that guy that looks like them, just like Jerry Jones when he hired Mike McCarthy. He let Mike McCarthy spend the night in his house because he looked like him. Marvin Lewis didn't get a chance to spend the night in his house because he didn't look like him. He had to sit there and think he would have had to count to China or something like that. So this is the reason why African Americans don't get these jobs, Charlton, because there's not somebody in position that can hire AE athletic directors. They don't have African American athletic directors. So the athletic directors around the country are white. Just like the majority of the head coaches, when you look at all college athletics, I'm going to say 95% of the athletic directors around the country are white, if not higher, maybe even 98%. So you're not going to go out and hire guys who don't look like you. You think about Gene Smith. He's the athletic director at Ohio State. He doesn't hire black head coaches. So, I mean, if you got athletic directors that are African-American in one of the largest institutions athletically in the country, and you don't hire African-American coaches, who else is going to do it?
That's interesting. USC, when they won the last Rose Bowl, it was actually Lynn Swann as the athletic director, and African-American man. And then when you go back to one that last national championship, it was Mike Garrett who was athletic director, and he hired Pete Carroll. And, of course, Swann had a lot to say with maybe
there you go. You're talking about two African-American athletic directors out there at USC, the most notable franchise in college athletics on the West Coast. Neither one of those African-American athletic directors hired an African-American head coach. That's the root of your problem right there. If you don't hire somebody who looks like you, you can't expect a white athletic director to hire him, Charlton, when a black athletic director won't.
You know what's interesting about that statement? If we look at the West Coast, the Pac-12 is the premier, conference really in the whole country for overall athletic success. You can Google that. They beat the SEC. They beat the Big Ten. They beat the Big 12 and the ACC for overall athletic accomplishment. But when you look at coaches, the top paid coach, I won't say he's top paid because I don't know for sure, but I will say the coach that has sent more college players onto the NFL in the Pac-12, David Shaw out of Stanford. I know there's talk about David Shaw being comfortable at Stanford. There's not a lot of pressure. He gets kids that are not problem kids, like some of the kids down. I'm not going to name any specific conference, but there's a lot of programs that always have kids in trouble. You can go north and south and do that. Stanford hasn't had that. So my question to you is, as a Southern guy, with the success that David Shaw has had at Stanford with high academic kids, why hasn't that been a trend for the Pac-12 to say, wait a minute, we have a guy up north on the farm that sent the majority of players out of the Pac-12 to the NFL. They came out of Stanford. Stanford's one of the highest recruiting colleges on the West Coast. Stanford University, that's under David Shaw. So the paperback test would say he doesn't pass it. But when it comes to success, why hasn't his success opened more doors? Or maybe it has. Look at Arizona State, and Arizona also a big city. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Arizona State has an African-American athletic director.
Yeah.
They also have an African-American head coach in football.
Yeah.
And Kevin Sumlin's also an African-American coach down at Arizona. But as you talk about media market and what does media market mean, you're right there in the Bay Area. That's what Stanford is,
yeah.
the number 4 media market in the country. Does that translate in the popularity of Stanford University on a national scale? No, it doesn't. Just like with UCLA and USC, they're the number 2 media market
yeah.
in the country in Los Angeles. Does that translate to people wanting to be there and them having primetime games? No, it doesn't. So that's why the media market doesn't mean anything. And as people are looking at Stanford, you got Cal Berkeley right there, right across the street from them, basically.
Yeah.
You got 3 major universities, San Jose State, Cal Berkeley, and Stanford, right there in that huge media market.
Yeah.
Does it draw kids? No, it doesn't. So when you look at where kids want to be, they want to be seen early in the day and they want to be seen in the primetime games. That's what they're getting in the South. And so in the West Coast, they have to do something about fixing where they are, Charlton. They can't compete from the Texas on eastward. They just can't, because that's where all the big money schools are, Charlton. That's where all the big stadiums are. And as a young person, like I said, you can care less about media market. That's what adults think of. When you're 18 years old, you want to be in the most friendliest environment in the sport that you play.
Yeah.
And that's east of Texas, Charlton.
Well, I disagree to a certain extent. We just covered, and people can look it up now. Now, we did the women's top 10 college basketball programs, and 4 are from the West Coast, out of the Pac-12. And that's when you look at schools, that are out here on the West Coast, and they're in major media markets, and they're not having to go to the South to become highly ranked or to attract top players.
But you're talking about girls basketball. On a grand scale, how many girls basketball games are played in prime time? If you putting the boys' games up, the men's game up, whatever it is, versus the ladies' games, they're not played in prime time. They're not must-see TV. You're not going to see them Saturday on ABC, Fox, and CBS.
Yeah.
You're not going to see them on those sports channels, NBC. You might see them on the cable networks, but you're not going to get them in prime time. That's what the appeal is to the kids now coming out. If you went out to a high school
yeah.
and asked any high school kid, where would you rather play? Would you rather play in the SEC or would you rather play in the Pac-12? Would you rather play in the ACC or would you rather play in the Pac-12? Would you rather play in the Big 12, the Big 10? That's what you have to ask the high school kids, not the adults. You have to ask them, because that's where they're gravitating to.
Yeah. I don't really agree 100% with that, and I'll say because of this. If you look at the whole scope of sports, the Pac-12 has the winningest conference for all the sports combined with all the schools. So maybe down in the SEC, it's more football-centric. But when you look at overall sports, from football, basketball, baseball, track and field, soccer, golf, tennis, it's the Pac-12 conference, Big C. If we only look at one segment of the population, yeah, maybe the SEC has that, because they exploit those boys a lot better than they do on the West Coast, and that's true.
You know what winning is in sports, Charlton, is revenue generating.
Yeah.
Do those sports that the Pac-12 dominate in generate revenue? We just talked about the SEC after the football season splitting $44 million each in 16 institutions. Does the Pac-12 come close to that at all? Splitting $16 million each in those 12 universities. They don't even come close. And so when we talk about revenue-generating sports, that's what colleges are really gauged on. When you're talking about football, basketball, some baseball, and baseball is huge in the SEC.
Yeah.
I think at one point they had 10 of the top 25 teams in the country out of the SEC in baseball going into the World Series last year.
Yeah.
So when we talk about sports that are generating revenue, yes, there's golf teams that win. There's tennis teams that win on the West Coast because it's sunny out there. And so you got, 365 days that sports is good. You don't have inclement weather.
Yeah.
That's why they're dominating those sports. But how much money do those sports generate, Charlton, when they're winning those overall titles versus football and basketball and those other conferences?
That's still a debate up for grabs because I think overall the Pac-12 does a better job on overall sports. Yeah, football-centric, it may go to SEC, and I'm sure not many people will disagree. They've just learned to exploit players better, Big C. It doesn't mean they're walking out of there with educations. I'm not making a blanket statement, but I think we should look at that.
Think about USC. You talk about exploitation. What did Reggie Bush get at USC?
That's exploitation. There's a lot of good.
Back a Heisman Trophy because he was under the table.
No,
so much.
His girlfriend gave him some money and maybe a house too, Big C. But we know that's
on the take. So that was a paid university.
That's one guy out of
there playing for pay.
Allegedly,
they had to give back a national title. They had to give back a Heisman Trophy. We haven't seen that in the SEC yet.
And we know some things about Cam Newton and a lot of the Manning family. There's a lot of things that are not talked about.
They didn't have to give back a Heisman Trophy, Charlton. They didn't have to give back a national championship.
Sometimes they have the right skin color, but there's a lot of that goes on. I love the Southern.
Let's think.
Yeah.
Cam Newton was African American just like Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
But my point is, and if you can prove that he had to give back a Heisman Trophy,
I can't
and
prove
he's on the same level that USC is.
Big C.
When Reggie Bush had to give back the Heisman Trophy, they had to give back the national championship. Matter of fact, the coach left town because the school was about to go on probation.
Well, that's happened at a lot of places, Big C. But you got to also agree, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors that good old boys are a part of, and that's all under the table because a lot of guys know that goes on. And they just happen to do it better down south. And as far as teams getting into bowl games, when you're media, a lot of the media members are down there part of the SEC that was making up these bowl games. They voted their good old friends in there. It doesn't mean they won all their bowl games. The Pac-12 won the second amount of bowl games of all the Power 5 schools, but they have yet to get a team into the Final Four, not because they're not winning their bowl games, but they're just being ostracized out by a lot of the good old boys. And basically, we know that's true too, but it's all fair and love and lore. I love talking about that. And I think another guy that left USC and he went to LSU, your friend Ed Orgeron happened to win a national championship with the LSU Tigers. I think he's making $9 million this year as part of a massive extension. Well, Ed Orgeron didn't get a lot of the accoutrements in this West Coast that he got down south. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's because the West Coast felt that he wasn't a quality enough coach to be out there, and he showed them that how they went wrong, Charlton. What did USC do last year as far as wins? They didn't make a major bowl game. I think they played in the Holiday Bowl.
Yeah,
Ed Orgeron played in the national championship game and won it. And this is a guy that USC said he did not have enough talent to smooth with the boosters out there because he didn't talk like him, he didn't look like him, he didn't dress like him.
Yeah.
And that's what you talk about when you're looking at schools on the West Coast that can't compete with the schools in the South, Charlton, because they have a certain country club look that they're looking for on the West Coast. That's the type of coach that they want. They wants to come in with a bow tie on, Charlton, and sit there and sip martinis in the afternoon.
So they want Tim
Kelly. In the South, they got guys who want to go to work.
Yeah.
That's what they is. Give me some blue jeans and a pickup.
Yeah.
That's what you got down in the South. And you can see how it's played out in the last decade, Charlton, as far as the national championship landscape.
Yeah.
The guys down here, the good old boys who don't mind putting their nose to the grindstone and coaching football versus sitting in a country club eating sushi and drinking martinis.
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. They're winning national championships, and they're out there searching for the next great guy.
I still think they're winning because they learned to better exploit African-American players, and you can Google that too. I want to bring up one more fact that I think is big for football, and I can't wait until I get you on the air when USC knocks off Alabama in the college football kickoff. I can't wait for that coming up here in the kickoff of 2020
let me
football.
Put it this. USC should win that game today.
Okay.
If they were playing today, USC should win that game. When you think about the players that USC has returning, on their team. Kevin Slovis, a great set of offensive linemen and receivers returning.
Yeah.
Outstanding running back. Right now, USC on paper has a better team than Alabama. But the thing about that paper, that's what they write the plays on.
Yeah.
And then you got to get out on the field and play the plays.
Are you saying?
When it comes to just man and gut check,
yeah.
USC hasn't had a chance to do that to Alabama yet. For some reason, they get a little soft when they see all that crisp.
They're going to be like Nancy Pelosi and tear up that speech that Nick Saban's giving them good old boys. The NFL invites 337 players to the NFL Combine, but only 12 from the FCS will take part in the annual pre-draft scouting. It's actually a spectacle, Big C. Your thoughts?
It is a spectacle, and one of the things that's a disservice to the football subdivision players, Charlton, there are many players every year that make the NFL. But when they don't get an opportunity to be invited to the Combine, Charlton, that means that their draft stock drops. And a lot of them become free agents, and they go in and they make teams at a very cheap rate, Charlton. They get the minimum salary that teams can bring them in for. And they see these players throughout the year. You know, you bring players into the Combine. And what you're saying by the Combine is that the 12 to 15 games that they played during the regular season and bowl season didn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
That wasn't enough tape on these players, so you're going to bring them in. It's not like you haven't gotten all the intangibles on them
already
at their universities. You haven't gone in and worked them out individually. And all the major universities have a pro day where the players go and work out on campus on their own facilities. So a lot of the smaller school guys get the shaft, Charlton, because they don't get an opportunity, and this should be more of a showcase for them. I think that the NFL should invite at least 50 of the football subdivision players to the Combine, because you're going to draft at least that many and bring them in as free agents also.
Yeah, they're going to bring them in anyway, Big C. It's all fair and level war. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I really love are called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Also launching the real estate channel in the spring of 2020. Looking for 100 real estate brokers that want to list their properties on TV. That's part of the Big C team. Really looking forward to that. Big C, as we close, I look at the NBA, and we saw small ball last night in Los Angeles with the Houston, coming in there and knocking off the LA Lakers. And I still think they're playing with some emotional things going on. That's just my opinion. Before I get in that game and get your thoughts, tonight's NBA schedule: Dallas at Washington, Memphis is at Philadelphia. Man, Philadelphia's got to turn some things around. Atlanta's at Boston. Detroit's at Oklahoma City. The defending world champion Toronto Raptors at the Indiana Pacers. Houston is at Phoenix. Miami's at Sacramento. And Portland is at Utah. When I saw last night the Rockets come to L.A., there was no Clint Capella. And in the first period, I thought, man, the Lakers are going to run away with this thing. And I think maybe the Lakers saw that too. But what I saw last night was Russell Westbrook coming back to L.A., where he grew up and went to high school in L.A., I think Lucinger High School, and also played at UCLA. It's like he was showing out for the hometown. Also, he had a lot of that Mamba mentality in him last night, and they actually took care of the Lakers by double digits. I did not expect that to happen. Is that sustainable in the playoffs, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, how many teams that you've seen, franchises that have won championships playing small ball in the NBA?
Well, Golden State did, but they brought in a big guy in Durant to help them get over the hump, and they knew they needed that big guy, Big C. Your thoughts?
Did they win it without him the first time?
They got better with him, though. They won it with and
without him. Did they win a championship without Durant the first time?
They won it, but they were better with him. They didn't try to get worse.
They won a championship without Durant. And you need to go back to the 90s also. There was a team called Chicago.
Yeah.
They won 3 consecutive titles playing small ball.
Yeah, but you
Dennis Rodman played center on those teams at 6'7".
Yeah.
They won the championship playing small ball. The 6'7" guys were the tallest guys they had on the floor. Golden State did it also 3 times, and Draymond Green was playing center. Kevin Durant never played center. He always played on the wing out there. So when you think about teams playing small ball, other teams can't defend them, Charlton. They can't run with them. And so you get tired with those big guys. Those big guys are out of place. The NBA is no longer a bully league when Shaq could just back everybody down under the basket, knock them on the ground, and dunk it. It's become soft like the NFL has. So small ball can work because when you run those big guys, they might be athletic, but they can't run with 6'3" guys all night long up and down the floor because you have a shot clock. And just like with Golden State, because they played small ball, they shot the ball in 12 to 15 seconds. They weren't trying to milk it down to the last 22 seconds to shoot the ball, Charlton. So that's how small ball is effective, is that you're shooting the ball within 12 to 14 seconds. You're not trying to get it up to the 24-second mark before you launch it.
I think it is a somewhat of a sea change. I know Walton, when he's with the Celtics, they had a championship. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in Showtime. You had no more of a fast-breaking team than they had, and also the great team, the Dream, Olajuwon. Those are big guys, but it does change back and forth. I still don't think there's any way they get through the West with that small ball, because if they go cold shooting, it's going to hurt them. But I love the talk.
What was the last team in the NBA to win a championship prior to the Toronto Raptors that had a bona fide center in the lineup? And when you think about the Raptors last year, Gasol didn't play half the time.
Yeah.
He started the game, but he did as much sitting as he did playing.
Yeah.
But somebody who had an all-star center, what was the last NBA team to win a championship with an all-star center?
Yeah, it goes back and forth, and we'll see if they get through this year. They got to get out of the West first. I don't think they can do it with what I saw last night, but it is great for conversation. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, yesterday in baseball, 2 significant statements were made. Pete Rose reapplied for reinstatement into baseball to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Hall of Famer Hank Aaron came out and stated that everybody who was involved in the baseball cheating scandal should be banned from baseball for life from the Houston Astros.
Yeah.
So if they don't ban the players and every member of the Houston Astros for life from betting on and gambling on baseball and cheating, then they should allow Pete Rose back into baseball.
Yeah, they should allow Pete Rose in no matter what, Big C. But we'll allow him in, and you can too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. You can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe. And as we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.